If you're using Jest for unit testing in your project, you might want to watch this video because I've built something that's very helpful, at least it was for me. I'm talking about something I called jest-results, which you can use in combination with Jest. Yeah, let me just immediately tease you by showing you what it does. I've set up this example repository, I called it jest-results usage example, and it really is nothing but some add function that sums up multiple numbers or multiplies some numbers. And in the end, I added some unit tests for those. Let me just run yarn tests and let's see what's happening. Boom. That's exactly what's happening. It's creating files, and that's what jest-results actually does. So if you look into this and only this file, you can actually see there are 6 or 8 tests in total. And what it actually did is it captured the output of those tests and it put it into individual log files. Right now I actually had this only statement on this test, so it only actually ran this test. So let me repeat the whole process to make this even more clear. You can now see all of the tests have been run. One has actually been skipped because that's the second one here with this skip statement. The first one tries to check 1 plus 2 equals 4, so it fails. The next 4 tests or even 5 tests succeeded, and then there's one more test that failed. You can see on which line number the tests are in this add.spec.ts file. You can see how they are named. For example, the first one has this name, so you can compare it with this name. And at the end you can see the status. So did the test fail? Did it succeed? Was it skipped, or was it even in to-do state? On top of that, you can also see some stats file, which actually compares the number of succeeding tests versus the number of failing tests, and it also tells you how many tests were skipped, etc. If you look into those log files, let's take the first one for example. That's the first test. Let me move this to the side and let me show you the test file itself. In parallel, you can see the test definition like this. So it actually captured the hello world statement that's part of this test and it put it into this log file. If there would have been another statement like hello end of the test or whatever, let me execute those tests again. You will actually see nothing's changing because the test is already failing on line number 10 and therefore nothing changes, right? Because it never actually gets there. But of course, if I would have moved that here, you would now see the updated log file. All those jest-result log files actually end with .test.log. And if you say now like something okay, this is clustering my repository and it looks ugly and messy, please bear with me. There's actually a command line tool that's actually included, and you can use this to just get rid of all of those files immediately. It also has some options to only delete certain files, etc. But I think that's not the point here. The main point is like, what does this library do and why was it so helpful for me, or is it so helpful for me? Well, if you have hundreds of tests, and I mean, if you run the tests again, there are already some. And if you're working in a test-driven environment, for example, it can get messy very, very quickly, especially with the power of Jest, because it uses those Jest workers, etc., to do stuff in parallel so that things are sped up immensely. So that's actually a cool thing. But at the same point, all those tests are actually printing to the same console and it's happening in parallel. So you end up with a completely messy console, and that's not what I like. Maybe you're different, but for me that was not really my taste, and that's why I actually created that. There's also another subfolder with another test suite. You might now say something like, this is something very basic, what's so special about it? I absolutely agree. This is just a test environment for Jest. So let me first of all show you how to configure this. It depends. Yes, sorry, WhatsApp. It depends on how you're actually configuring your Jest. This is nothing but a test environment for Jest. A rather fancy one though. So that's something that you can use via npm. You can install it and you can configure it based on how you're actually configuring Jest. In my case, I'm using jest.config.ts files, but you can also use any other variant that Jest provides, for example, directly on the command line, etc. The important piece, the magic is happening here. You have to define the test environment to be the jest-results, either jsdom test environment or the node test environment. So actually jest-results provides both variants, and yeah, on top of that it provides different additional props or configuration options that you can change. One thing though, I agree that it's rather basic. I gotta admit though that there were quite some things that I did not think about immediately. So this actually evolved over quite a long time span, because I stumbled into more and more edge cases, especially when it comes to test states changing, for example. So if a test is first in state okay and then all of a sudden it fails, you need to change this log file. Or if you skip it, or if you set it to do. What if you actually solo a test and you're not actually rerunning another test? So I will get into those details now. So it's a test environment, not super magical, but still there's more to it than maybe is like visible at the very first sight. So let's go into this skipping topic, because I think that's the most complex topic there is. Let me close this folder. You can see test number 2 was actually skipped. Sorry, I need to close all those files. Test number 2 was skipped because I explicitly skipped it with this statement. Therefore, it also flagged it with skip. If I, however, solo another test by using the only statement, and I run yarn test again, that's an interesting case because it actually also skips a bunch of tests. And what now actually happened was jest-results was kind of clever, and it remembered the previous test results. It just added those parentheses around the status, but it actually keeps the original output, even though nothing is visible for these cases now, but it would have kept the original output, and it keeps the status from the previous test run, which is very helpful. You can adjust the configuration if you don't like this behavior. Then you have to set this property, and I was talking about the explicitly skipped tests and the implicitly skipped tests. In that case, you would need to change the behavior for the implicitly skipped tests and set it from true to false, because if you run your test again, you will now see that those tests were actually really skipped. That's not a default behavior, because I don't like this behavior very much, because often I just want to, like, for a brief moment, want to take a look at one individual test. That doesn't mean, however, that I actually want to get rid of all the other test results, which happened now. So it even also deleted the test output. If there was some statement inside there before, there's no statement in there anymore now. So yeah, I mean, it depends on your taste and what you need. But in general, this library differentiates between explicitly skipped tests via this statement versus uh, explicitly skipped tests with this statement on other tests, right? Or also if you're, for example, using the watch mode and you're rerunning only the failed tests and stuff. So that also might skip a lot of tests. And whenever that's happening, I call this implicitly skipped tests. Since we're already talking about props that we can change or configuration that we can change, there's also a third one in this ignore category, basically, and that's ignore not run tests. So to actually demonstrate this, let me clear all those log files. So I had to do a cut now because I messed up the properties. I confused them because it's kind of confusing. But these properties about ignoring the tests that have never been run before. So if you're in a clean state like right now with no log file, etc., and if you set this thing to true, you will actually, once you run the test suite, see that it will not create log files for the tests that have not been run at all, which might make sense in your setup. So actually there are 8 tests in this file, but only one was actually run. So that's why we only get one log file. If you, however, change this again, sorry about those debug statements, they will be gone soon, so you will not be seeing them. If you clean the log statements again, if you change the setting to false, let's run the tests again. This would happen if you set it to false. You will see all those already creating log files, but you will see the state not run yet. So it depends on what you really need. Yeah. Another property that you can set is keep logging to the console. So that's by default set to false. If you would set this to true, you would still be seeing the log statements while running the tests in the console itself. Another property that you can set, which might be very useful, is get is jest-results enabled. So basically, is this library enabled or not? You can turn it on or off with this function that just returns a boolean. This is the default function that's already provided if you're not like overriding it. We're checking the CI environment variable, and if it's set to true, then it will not print anything, or it will also not capture the console output, etc. But in every other case it will. So that might make sense if you run it on Jenkins as part of a pipeline, for example. Yeah, and last but not least, we have 2 hooks that basically allow you to hook into the setup phase and the teardown phase of the test environment from Jest itself. And yeah, that's basically it, I think. Is there anything else? Nothing too important. Yeah, if you find any bugs, this thing is completely freshly released. Of course, I've been working on it for a long time, but now I finally had the time to, well, redo it in a proper and clean way, so that not only I can reuse it in all of my projects, but also you can use it, and I hope some will use it and help me further improve it. Yeah, I have the feeling that I forgot something, but I always have it, so yeah, doesn't matter. Thanks for the attention, and yeah, see you soon. Bye.